We continue to cover that breaking news from overnight. The president and first lady both testing positive for COVID-19. Joining us now, presidential historian Michael Beschloss to put the historical significance of all of this into some context this morning. Once again, Mr. Beschloss, we find ourselves in some uncharted waters, but try and put this into some historical context if you can. When the president is seriously ill. Again, it's important to note we don't know at this point how President Trump is doing, but in the past, when the president has become seriously ill, what's happened? How many times has something like this happened in our nation's history?
Well, the last time a president's life was in this much jeopardy was in 1981 when Ronald Reagan was shot in Washington, D.C., outside the Washington Hilton. And he benefited from the fact that there was something called an amendment to the Constitution, which allows a president to temporarily pass power if necessary. Reagan didn't do that then. He did it a couple of years later when he had an operation saying that he would transfer power to Vice President George H.W. Bush for a number of hours until he was out of anesthesia. That's something that was not true of most of American history. It was only passed in the 1960s. For most of American history, in a situation like this, we might have been without a president if a president was incapacitated.
Michael, given the spread or the potential spread of this, even though we know Vice President Pence has now this morning said tested positive, but how far down the line?
Negative.
Negative, I meant. I'm sorry, negative, absolutely negative. How far down the line is the line of succession? Do they get planned for something like this?
Goes all the way down through the cabinet. There's something called continuity of government, which the executive branch is usually very serious about. During the Eisenhower years, they would actually have drills. For instance, if there was a nuclear attack, the president would get on a helicopter and fly to the hideout in Virginia that he was to go to if there was an actual attack at that time from the Soviet Union. So the good part of this is, if there's any silver lining to this, Craig, is that we've got a constitutional system. If something, God forbids, happened to a president and or a vice president or then a Speaker of the House, President pro tem of the Senate, then you go through the cabinet in order basically of seniority. So there is a line of succession. The republic would be secure.
So breaking down that process, if the worst case scenario does come true and the president might be unable to temporarily do his job, what is the exact next step that happens?
Well, what could happen is if the president was conscious enough, he could write a letter the same as Reagan did to Vice President Bush in the 1980s. Or if that was not true, under the constitutional amendment, you could have a majority of the cabinet do it or another similar body declare him incapacitated and say the vice president will act as president until the president is able to operate again. We have not been in those waters before. We're about to see a time in history we've never seen before, especially because we are 1 month before a president running for re-election. We have never seen a president this sick so soon, so close to an election.
Let's talk about right now. At this point, the president says he's currently quarantining in the White House and will be working in isolation from his residency. At this point, though, can he fulfill his normal duties within this context, or will the vice president step in just to take on a bit more responsibility? How does that work?
My guess is, knowing President Trump, this is not someone who's going to be very eager to give any responsibility to the vice president if he can help it. So you will have a situation. We know that President Trump operates from the living quarters for a large part of the day already, even in times of health. And as you know, a president can operate from just about anywhere. He could operate from a hospital as long as he was conscious. As you know, a president has very good communications, for instance, on Air Force One. None of that is in sight. But the point is the presidency is built so that as long as you've got an alert, conscious president, he doesn't have to be sitting in the Oval Office.
Presidential historian Michael Beschloss for us this morning. Michael, thank you, sir.